It's worth a quick detour to talk briefly about collections in other programming languages. Now, I don't need to get super specific about each individual language, but there are a few general things you should be aware of. First off, JavaScript allows anything in any element of the array. Numbers, strings, booleans, you can even have elements undefined. So it supports this mixed data idea. But many languages only allow specific kinds of data in an array. It is an array of strings or an array of integers. You can't have both in the same array. And this is probably more common across languages. Similarly, JavaScript allows us to create an array with, say, for example, 3 elements, but we can then add to it or even subtract from it. But other languages may want your arrays to be a fixed size. You have to know how big it is before you make it. If you make an array that's 5 elements long, you can't change it after it's been made. Now, there's a couple of words you may run into with this idea, that of a mutable versus an immutable object. If something is mutable, it can mutate, it can change, whereas something is immutable, it cannot change after it's been created. So in quite a lot of languages, you actually choose whether you want an immutable array or a mutable array. Now, you might think, why on earth would I ever want an unchangeable array? Why wouldn't I just want the flexibility of one that can change, that I can add to, subtract to? Well, think of a couple of examples. Say you make an array containing all the days of the week or the months of the year. Do you really need to add elements to that array? Do you actually want that array to support the idea of suddenly removing the second element mid-program? Probably not. And one of the benefits of immutable arrays is that they're usually faster, because the language can just allocate an area of memory for that array that it knows will never change. Whereas with mutable or changeable objects, there's always a little bit of overhead for knowing that this array may grow or shrink. We've seen that an array is an ordered list of items. We start at position 0 and go up one by one. But there are other kinds of collections where we might want something different. Let's say instead of the built-in index of 0, 1, 2, we might want A, B, C. Or even, more likely, to have the idea of a key, something that's more meaningful to us. Let's see an example. Say we have a list of states. It might be very useful to have this collection, but using the abbreviation for these states. So instead of going up 0, 1, 2, we'll use AL, AK, AZ. Now this kind of an array can be created in many languages, and it goes by quite a few different names. Generally, it's called an associative array, but some languages call this a dictionary, or a map, or a table. There are even a few more names to it. For those of you who've worked with databases, you may think there's kind of a link between these. This, of course, is not a database. It's nothing to do with a database. This is still a variable in memory, but it's a very useful one to allow us to go directly to each individual piece of data. So when you move into exploring any language, you're going to find it's very common for you to consider what is that language's built-in support for different kinds of collections. What does it let you do and what does it make you do?